My daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, you're too old to live with us now." I smiled, picked up my walking stick, and left quietly. A week later, I woke up to see 31 missed calls on my phone. That moment changed everything. If you're feeling pulled into this story, make sure to subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Edward Martin. I'm 78 years old, and I've lived long enough to know that life doesn't always go the way you hope. I'm a widower, a retired carpenter, and for the last few years, I had been living with my daughter Claire, her husband Richard, and their little girl Sophie. They were my family, my world, and the reason I got up every morning. Life in their house wasn't perfect, but it gave me comfort. I would make myself useful, fixing squeaky doors, building shelves, or telling Sophie bedtime stories. She loved when I walked her to the park, holding her hand as I leaned on my stick. She made me feel alive in a way that nothing else could. But the truth is, things were changing. Richard, my son-in-law, had started making comments about how crowded the house was. He worked long hours and wanted peace when he got home, not an old man shuffling around with a cane. Claire tried to keep the peace, but I could see the strain on her face. She was torn between being a good wife and being a good daughter. One evening, Richard finally pushed the issue. I was in the living room when I heard his voice through the kitchen wall. "Claire, we can't keep doing this. Your dad needs more than we can give. He's slowing us down." Her voice was soft, but I caught the words. "He's my father, Richard, but I know what you're saying." Later that night, Claire sat across from me. Her hands shook as she folded them on the table. She looked at me with teary eyes and said, "Dad, you're too old to live with us now. It's better if you find another place." I felt my heart crack, but I didn't let her see the pain. I smiled, nodded, and said, "All right, sweetheart, I understand." Then I stood, picked up my walking stick, and packed a small bag. Sophie ran to me, sobbing, "Grandpa, please don't go." Her little arms clung to my leg, and I bent down slowly to kiss her forehead. "It's okay, Sophie. Grandpa's just going on a little trip." That night, I left their house with a smile on my face, but inside, I felt hollow. I told myself I didn't want to be a burden, that I was doing the right thing, but the silence of the room into the lost. The first night in the small boarding house was the lonely. The room was but bare, a single bed, a chair, a nightstand that buzzed faintly. I turned it up. I placed my walking stick and belonging and sat on the bed. For the first time in years, I had no sound of Sophie's laughter echoing down the hallway, no warm meal waiting at the table, no family noise at all. Just silence. I told myself this was for the best. Claire had a family of her own to think about, and Richard had made it clear he thought I didn't belong there. I reminded myself that I didn't want to be a burden, but the truth was harder to face. I missed them desperately. Every evening I had been part of their little routines, helping Sophie with her homework, telling her stories from when I was young, even sitting quietly in the living room so Claire could feel like someone was keeping her company. Now those moments were gone, and all I had left were memories. I tried calling Claire a couple of times during that first week. The conversations were short. "Dad, how are you settling in?" she asked politely. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I replied, forcing cheer into my voice. "The room's nice. I'm keeping busy." She sighed softly. "That's good. Sophie misses you." "I miss her too. Tell her Grandpa loves her." "Of course," Claire said, but I could hear something else behind her words. Guilt, regret, maybe both. Meanwhile, Sophie was not taking my absence well. Though I didn't know it at the time, she refused to eat dinner some nights and cried herself to sleep asking for me. She asked her mother daily, "When is Grandpa coming back?" Claire tried to reassure her, but Richard grew more frustrated. "She has to get used to it," he said sharply one evening. "Your dad was making things harder for us. It's better this way." But Claire wasn't so sure anymore. The quiet around the house didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty, and Sophie's sadness was weighing heavily on her heart. At the boarding house, my days blurred together. I took short walks with my stick, ate simple meals in the small dining hall, and returned to my room where the walls seemed to press in closer every night. I would sometimes sit by the window and watch families walk by on the street, children holding their parents' hands, couples laughing as they carried groceries. I wondered if Claire realized just how much I missed being part of her world. On the 6th day, I walked to the park we used to visit together. Sophie loved the swings there, and I couldn't help but imagine her little legs kicking as I pushed her higher into the air. I sat on the same bench we used to share and ran my hand over the worn wood. A lump formed in my throat. I whispered to myself, "She needs me, whether they see it or not." What I didn't know was that Sophie had overheard another late-night argument between her parents. Richard complained once again about me, saying, "He's old, Claire. He needs a nursing home, not our house." Sophie's eyes filled with tears, and she made a choice in her 10-year-old heart. If they wouldn't bring me back, she would go find me herself. The next morning, she slipped out of the house quietly, clutching the little stuffed bear I had given her years ago. Claire thought she was still asleep, and Richard left early for work, so neither noticed she was gone until hours later. That same morning, I woke up to find my phone dead on the nightstand. I had forgotten to charge it overnight. By the time I plugged it in, the screen lit up with a number that made my stomach lurch. 31 missed calls. All from Claire. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. My heart pounded. Something had gone terribly wrong. Claire never called that many times unless it was an emergency. I pressed redial, and she answered almost immediately, her voice panicked and broken. "Dad, it's Sophie. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. Please, you have to help us." I gripped my walking stick, fear surging through me. In that instant, I knew the loneliness I had been feeling was nothing compared to the terror of possibly losing my granddaughter. The conflict that had begun my quiet had now grown into something far more urgent, something that demanded action. I had left quietly and they told me I was too old. But now, with Sophie missing, I realized I would have to prove to them, and to myself, that age had not taken away my strength, my purpose, or my role as the protector of my family. When I heard Claire's frantic voice on the phone, every part of me froze for a moment. My daughter, who had told me I was too old to live in her house, was now calling through tears, begging for help. Sophie was missing. The weight of those words slammed into me harder than anything I had ever felt. My heart hammered in my chest, but instinct over. I grabbed my walking stick, stuffed my phone in my pocket, and rushed out the door. On the way to Claire's house, my mind spun in a storm of fear and determination. Sophie was only 10 years old, small, tender-hearted, and she trusted me more than any. She was the one who had cried when I left, the one who clung to me as if I were her safe place. If she was gone now, it wasn't because she didn't love her parents. It was because she loved me. Somehow, deep inside, I knew she had been trying to reach me. When I arrived, Claire ran out of the house before I could even knock, her face with her eyes red and swollen from crying. She threw her, shaking. "Dad, I don't know what to do. Can't find her anywhere. She's been gone since this morning. We've called the police, but they haven't found her yet." I held her shoulders and steadied her. "Listen to me. We will find her. I promise. Tell me, where does she like to go? Where did she go with me most often?" Claire sniffled and shook her head. "The park, the library, sometimes the corner store. But she wouldn't run away, Dad. She wouldn't." I nodded. "She wouldn't run away from me either. She's looking for me, Claire. I know it." Richard came out then, looking rattled I had never seen before. He wasn't barking orders or complaining. He looked scared. "We've searched the neighborhood twice," he said. "No one has seen her. I don't know what else to do." I tightened my grip on my walking stick. "Then we start where she feels safe, the places where she and I always went together. If Sophie is looking for me, that's where she'll be." Without waiting, I turned toward the street. My legs ached, but I pushed forward, each step fueled by urgency. Claire and Richard followed. We checked the library first, but the librarian hadn't seen her. We asked at the corner store, but no one matched Sophie's description. Each time we came up empty, Claire's panic grew, and Richard's face twisted with guilt. Finally, I told them, "There's one place left we haven't checked, the old playground. She loves that swing set." We hurried there, my body straining with the effort, but I refused to slow down. The memory of her laughter on those swings, her little voice yelling, "Push me higher, Grandpa," pushed me forward like a flame in my chest. When we reached the playground, I scanned every corner. For a moment, my heart sank. The slides and swings stood empty, the benches abandoned. But then, just beyond the far side, I spotted a small figure sitting alone on a wooden bench, clutching something in her arms. It was Sophie. My knees nearly gave way, but I forced myself to keep walking. As we drew closer, I saw she was holding the old teddy bear I had given her years ago. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, and her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Grandpa!" she cried, running toward me. She threw her arms around my waist, burying her face against me. "I wanted to find you. I don't want you to live alone. I don't want you to leave us." I held her tightly, my heart breaking and healing all at once. "Oh, Sophie," I whispered, stroking her hair. "I'm here. You found me. You're safe now." Claire collapsed beside us, wrapping her arms around both of us, sobbing uncontrollably. Richard stood behind, silent, his face filled with shame as he realized the depth of what had been lost when they pushed me away. That moment was the turning point. It wasn't just about finding Sophie. It was about realizing that family cannot survive by shutting out the people who love us most. Sophie had risked everything because she refused to let me disappear from her life, and in her little heart, she had done what none of the adults had the courage to do. She had chosen love over convenience. I looked at Claire then, my voice steady. "This is what happens when family forgets what truly matters. You told me I was too old to live with you, but Sophie knew better. She knew I still belonged." Claire sobbed harder, holding her daughter close. Richard lowered his head, speechless. For the first time in years, the truth had broken through. I realized then that this was no longer just about me leaving their home quietly. This was about reclaiming my place in their lives, not out of pride, but because love and family have no expiration date. Holding Sophie in my arms at that playground was the moment everything came crashing down. For a week, I had been convincing myself that leaving quietly was the right thing to do, that maybe Claire and Richard would be happier without me around. But here was my granddaughter, trembling in my embrace, clutching her old teddy bear, showing me with every sob that my absence had carved a hole in her little heart. "Grandpa, don't leave us again," she whispered through tears. Her words pierced me deeper than anything Claire had said the night she told me I was too old. I pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. You're safe now." Claire fell to her knees beside us, wrapping her arms around Sophie and me. Her sobs shook her whole body. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I thought I was doing what was best, but I hurt both of you. I can't believe I let this happen." For a moment, I didn't speak. I just looked at my daughter, the same little girl I once carried on my shoulders, the one who used to beg me to fix her toys, the one I walked down the aisle years ago. Now she was a mother herself, but in that moment, she looked like the child who still needed me. My heart softened. "Claire," I said gently, "I never wanted to be a burden. I only wanted to love you and be part of your life, but love doesn't fade because of age. And Sophie, she needs to see that family means standing by each other, not pushing each other away." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're right, Dad. I lost sight of that. I let pressure and fear get in the way of what really matters." She held Sophie tighter. "I can't lose you, Dad. I can't lose her either. Please come back home." Behind us, Richard stood silent, his hands shoved into his pockets, his face pale. For once, he wasn't the confident man barking opinions about what should be done. He looked shaken. Finally, he stepped forward. His voice was low, almost ashamed. "I was wrong too," he admitted. "I thought I was protecting Claire, giving her peace. But I didn't see what you mean to Sophie, or even to us. I didn't realize how much you still carry, how much you give." He paused, swallowing hard. "You belong with us, Edward, and I was too proud to see it." I looked at him for a long moment. Richard and I had never been close. He was practical, sharp-edged, and sometimes careless with words, but in his eyes, I saw something new, humility. I nodded slowly. "Richard, it's not about me belonging in your house. It's about us belonging to each other. Family isn't perfect. It's messy and loud and sometimes painful, but it's also the only thing that lasts. Don't ever forget that." Sophie sniffled, looking up at me with wide, tear-stained eyes. "So, you'll come back home, Grandpa? You'll stay?" I cupped her face in my hands and smiled, my chest aching with both love and relief. "Yes, sweetheart. I'll come home. I'll stay as long as you need me." The three of us, grandfather, mother, and granddaughter, held onto each other as if letting go would shatter us all over again. For the first time since I had left, I felt whole again. As we stood there, neighbors began to gather, drawn by the sight of our reunion. A few offered kind smiles, some clapped softly, but I barely noticed. All I could see was my family, huddled together on that playground bench, broken but beginning to heal. On the walk back home, Sophie held my hand tightly, refusing to let go even for a second. Claire walked beside me, her other hand resting gently on my arm. Richard followed quietly, his head lowered, but I knew he was reflecting on the lessons Sophie had taught all of us, that love is not disposable, and neither are the people who give it. When we reached the house, Claire opened the door for me like she used to when I first moved in years ago. The sight of the familiar living room brought tears to my eyes. My chair was still in the corner, my tools were still stacked neatly in the garage, and Sophie's drawings still hung on the fridge. I realized then that this had always been my home, no matter what words had been spoken in anger or frustration. That evening, we sat down together for dinner. It was simple: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. But to me, it felt like a feast. Sophie sat beside me, leaning her head against my shoulder between bites. Claire looked at me with soft, regretful eyes, while Richard made an effort to engage in conversation without his usual sharpness. For the first time in a long time, there was peace at that table. The climax wasn't just Sophie being found. It was the truth breaking open for all of us. They had thought I was too old, too much of a burden, but Sophie had reminded them, and me, that love doesn't come with an expiration date. I wasn't done being a father. I wasn't done being a grandfather. My purpose hadn't ended with age. It had only deepened. That night, after everything had calmed down, I sat quietly in the same chair I had left behind a week earlier. The lamp beside me gave off a soft glow, and I could hear Sophie's gentle breathing from her bedroom down the hall. Claire was in the kitchen cleaning up, and Richard had already gone to bed. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace. My heart was still heavy with all that had happened, but it was no longer weighed down by loneliness or rejection. It was full of love, of gratitude, and of the reminder that family ties are not broken by age or convenience. Claire joined me after a while, her hands wringing a dish towel. She looked tired, but there was something different in her eyes now. She sat across from me, her voice low and trembling. "Dad, I don't know how to say this without breaking down. I've been replaying the moment I told you to leave, and I feel ashamed. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone, but I realize now I was only making things worse." I looked at her, my only daughter, and smiled gently. "Claire, I know life hasn't been easy for you. You're trying to hold everything together. Work, marriage, raising a child. I don't blame you for feeling overwhelmed, but I need you to understand something. Being old doesn't mean being useless. I may walk slower, I may need a stick to get around, but I still have strength left, and I still have love to give." Her eyes filled with tears. She dropped the towel and reached across to take my hand. "You're right, Dad. I didn't see that. I let myself believe Richard when he said it would be easier without you here, but easier doesn't mean better. Our home hasn't been the same without you. And Sophie, she hasn't been the same either." I squeezed her hand gently. Sophie reminded us both what really matters. That little girl was willing to leave the house just to find me. She's braver than all of us combined, and it's because she understands something we forgot. Family is not about convenience. It's about presence, about being there for each other, even when it's hard. At that moment, Sophie padded into the living room, rubbing her eyes, clutching her teddy bear. She climbed into my lap without a word, resting her head against my chest. I wrapped my arms around her and kissed her forehead. "Grandpa's here," I whispered. She sighed and drifted back to sleep, her small body warm against me. I looked at Claire, and she nodded, wiping her tears. No words were needed. Sophie had already spoken for us. The days that followed were different. Richard, though still quiet and reserved, treated me with more respect. He started asking me about repairs around the house, as if to acknowledge that my skills and experience still mattered. Claire made more of an effort to include me in family decisions, and she apologized often, trying to repair the hurt between us. And Sophie, well, she barely let me out of her sight. She insisted I walk her to school again, that I read her bedtime stories, and that I sit with her during dinner. In her eyes, I wasn't old or in the way. I was her grandfather, her safe place, her friend. For me, the biggest change wasn't just moving back into the house. It was the realization that I still had a role to play, and it was one I couldn't abandon. Age had made me doubt myself, and my daughter's words had nearly broken me. But Sophie's love had brought me back to life. She taught me that love doesn't fade with time. It grows stronger when tested. Looking back now, I see the lesson clearly. Sometimes the world convinces us that older people no longer belong, that they've already given their best years and should step aside. But the truth is, our presence is needed more than ever. Wisdom, patience, and love don't expire. They are gifts we pass on to our children and grandchildren, and those gifts shape the people they become. Claire said I was too old to live with them, but Sophie reminded us both that I was not too old to be loved, not too old to matter, and not too old to protect what family means. That's the real heart of this story. As I sit here tonight, Sophie asleep in my lap, and Claire smiling softly from across the room, I feel grateful for the second chance we've been given. We nearly lost each other, but sometimes it takes a scare to wake us up to what really matters. Age is not a reason to push someone away. It's a reason to hold them closer, because time is precious, and love is all we truly leave behind. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too.